The Price of Incompetence, a look at the worst Civil War generals. The American Civil War, from 1861 to 1865, was a defining period in U.S. history, showcasing leadership under extraordinary pressures. We remember names like Grant and Lee, men who seemed born to command, their strategic genius etched into the very fabric of the nation. However, not every general rose to the occasion. This is the story of 12 Civil War generals whose decisions, temperament, or capabilities earned them a reputation for failure or controversy. Ambrose Burnside, the man who couldn't bridge the gap. Ambrose Burnside. Remembered less for his battlefield acumen and more for the extravagant facial hair that would lend its name to generations of sideburns. At Fredericksburg, Virginia, in the winter of 1862, Burnside faced Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. Burnside ordered wave after wave of frontal assaults. Men fell by the thousands, cut down by Confederate fire in a scene of unimaginable carnage. It was a defeat that shook the Union war effort to its core and cemented Burnside's place as a general overwhelmed by the responsibility thrust upon him. Braxton Bragg, the general. Even his own men couldn't stand him. War is a test of not only tactical prowess but also temperament. Braxton Bragg, commander of the Confederate Army of Tennessee, left much to be desired. His prickly personality alienated those around him, fostering an atmosphere of distrust and resentment within his own ranks. His subordinates often found themselves at odds with him, their whispers of dissatisfaction growing into a chorus of discontent. At Perryville, Kentucky, and later at Chattanooga, Tennessee, Bragg's inability to foster a cohesive command structure contributed to Confederate setbacks. Bragg's story underscores the importance of leadership in wartime, demonstrating how a general's temperament can be as much a liability as any enemy bullet. Benjamin Butler, Beast Butler, and the limits of political generals. The Civil War often blurred the lines between the political arena and the battlefield. Benjamin Butler, a Massachusetts politician, found himself thrust into the role of military commander. Butler gained notoriety for his harsh occupation policies in New Orleans, earning him the moniker Beast Butler. The Bermuda Hundred campaign in 1864 would prove to be his undoing. Butler's story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of appointing political generals, men whose ambitions often outweighed their abilities. John Bell Hood, the general who attacked himself out of an army. John Bell Hood, a man known for his battlefield bravery, embodied the Confederate fighting spirit. But beneath that veneer of gallantry lay a fatal flaw: recklessness. Given command of the Army of Tennessee in the summer of 1864, Hood inherited a force already battered by months of campaigning. His attacks, often poorly planned and executed with more zeal than strategic foresight, decimated his army. The Atlanta campaign and the subsequent Franklin-Nashville campaign witnessed the near destruction of the Confederacy's Army of Tennessee. Hood's story is a tragic one, a tale of a valiant leader whose courage ultimately outweighed his capacity for sound military judgment. George McClellan, the general who loved to drill more than he loved to fight. George McClellan, the young Napoleon as he was sometimes called, was a man of contradictions. A brilliant organizer and a master logistician, he transformed the Union Army into a formidable fighting force. Yet these admirable qualities were overshadowed by a fatal flaw: his crippling indecisiveness. McClellan, it seemed, was perpetually preparing for a battle that never came. This timidity frustrated President Lincoln, who famously remarked that McClellan had a case of the slows. The Peninsula Campaign in 1862 exemplified McClellan's shortcomings. McClellan's story is a reminder that even the most talented individuals can be undone by their own inner demons. Gideon Pillow, Fort Donelson, and the Surrender of a Reputation. Gideon Pillow, a man whose military career was as undistinguished as his name, serves as a stark example of the perils of political appointments in times of war. His moment of truth arrived at Fort Donelson, Tennessee, in February 1862. Tasked with defending this vital Confederate stronghold, Pillow demonstrated a remarkable capacity for poor judgment. His indecisiveness allowed Union forces under Ulysses S. Grant to encircle the fort. Pillow's story is a cautionary tale, a reminder that war is not a game to be played by amateurs. Nathaniel Banks, Up the Red River to Disaster. Nathaniel Banks, another politician-turned-general, demonstrated that some men are simply ill-suited for the rigors of military command. His tenure during the Civil War was marked by a series of blunders and miscalculations culminating in the disastrous Red River Campaign of 1864. Banks envisioned a grand campaign to capture Shreveport, Louisiana, and secure Union control of the Red River. However, his plans were poorly conceived, lacking in logistical foresight and strategic coherence. The Red River Campaign, a costly failure in terms of both men and resources, served as a fitting epitaph for Banks' military career. William Loring, A Study in Disobedience and Defeat. The Confederacy, though united in its cause, was often fractured by internal dissent, particularly within its military ranks. William Loring, a general whose career was marked by controversy and insubordination, embodied this internal strife. Loring's stubbornness, and his frequent clashes with superiors, undermined Confederate efforts in the Western theater. His actions at the Battle of Chattanooga, where he disobeyed orders and failed to provide crucial support to General Braxton Bragg, contributed to the Confederate defeat. Loring's story underscores the vital importance of unity and obedience within an army's ranks. Franz Sigel, lost in translation at the Battle of New Market. Franz Sigel, a German immigrant who had served in the Prussian army, arrived in the United States with a reputation for military prowess. However, his performance during the Civil War failed to live up to expectations. Siegel's appointment as a Union general was motivated in part by his ability to attract German-American recruits. The Battle of New Market, Virginia in 1864 exposed Siegel's shortcomings. Facing a Confederate force that included a battalion of cadets from the Virginia Military Institute, Siegel's command seemed to unravel. Siegel's story is a reminder that military leadership is not merely about transferring tactics from one continent to another. The early days of the Civil War were a time of uncertainty, a period when both sides were still assessing their strengths and weaknesses. Fort Henry, Tennessee, a seemingly impregnable Confederate fortress perched on the banks of the Tennessee River, became an early testing ground for both sides. Lloyd Tillman, the Confederate commander charged with defending Fort Henry, faced a formidable opponent in Ulysses S. Grant. The Battle of Fort Henry, fought in February 1862, would prove to be a mismatch. Tillman, outgunned and outmaneuvered by Grant's combined land and naval forces, found himself facing an impossible situation. Tillman's story, though brief, highlights the importance of adaptability in warfare. The First Battle of Bull Run, fought in July 1861 near Manassas, Virginia, was a pivotal moment in the early days of the Civil War. It shattered any illusions of a quick Union victory, revealing the harsh realities of a conflict that would drag on for years. Irvin McDowell, a Union general thrust into command despite his lack of battlefield experience, found himself facing a Confederate army equally green but no less determined to fight. McDowell's plan, though sound on paper, faltered in the face of fierce Confederate resistance and his own troops' inexperience. Panic spread through the Union ranks, turning an orderly retreat into a chaotic rout. Bull Run, a Confederate victory that sent shockwaves through the North, served as a harsh lesson for McDowell and for the Union. The American West, vast and unforgiving, became another battleground in the sprawling conflict of the Civil War. Henry Sibley, a Confederate general with grand ambitions and a flawed grasp of logistics, sought to carve out a Confederate empire in the Southwest. Sibley's New Mexico campaign, launched in 1862, was a study in hubris and miscalculation. He envisioned a sweeping conquest of the New Mexico territory, securing valuable gold and silver mines and potentially opening up a route to California. However, his campaign was plagued by supply shortages, inadequate transportation, and a tenacious Union defense. Sibley's New Mexico campaign, a costly failure, demonstrated that ambition without logistical foresight is a recipe for disaster. The Civil War, a conflict etched into the very soul of America, produced its share of heroes and villains, of strategic masterminds and tactical blunderers. The 12 generals we've examined, though united in their failures, offer valuable lessons for those who study the art of war. They remind us that leadership is a heavy mantle, one that requires not only tactical acumen, but also the ability to inspire, to adapt, and to learn from mistakes. These men, flawed as they were ultimately human, subject to the same frailties and misjudgments that plague us all. Their stories serve as a reminder that war is a costly endeavor, one that should be entered into with the utmost caution and with leaders who possess the wisdom and foresight to navigate its perilous currents. Please like and subscribe to History Recolored.